Hi, welcome to Opera Happy Hour, a web series where we investigate the art form of opera while also investigating the contents of my home bar. My name is Jeremy Frank. I'm the Associate Chorus Master at LA Opera, and I'm happy to welcome you back to my living room. For those of you who caught the last episode, you know each week we pick a theme and then I pair a drink with that theme, and we talk for about 25 minutes or half an hour about how that theme plays out throughout the operatic repertoire. Today's theme is leitmotifs, and if you have no idea what that is, don't be alarmed. The concept is strikingly simple, and the deployment by certain composers who use them in their composition, like Richard Wagner, is genius. So the concept is essentially this. A leitmotif is like a theme song. It's a melodic idea that can represent a thing, a person, a place, all sorts of different things that we're going to talk about throughout the episode today. Before we go much farther, let me tell you about today's pairing. Last time, I made a special drink and gave you a recipe, and today, because we're going to talk only about Wagner's music and only one piece of Wagner's music, I thought we'd keep it simple. We're drinking beer. Not just any beer, though. This beer. This is a Köstritzer Schwarzbier. It's super good. It's really yummy. And to get in the German mood, I thought we would drink it from a Stein, or as they say in German, ein Krug. So without any further ado, Prost. I was attracted to the idea of talking about Wagner on this web series for several reasons, one of which has to do with my own history at LA Opera. I've been with the company for 12 full seasons, and so my early seasons, 2008 and 9 and 2009-10, were of course when the company did the ring cycle. And I was newly moved from New York City to Los Angeles. I had had a recent heartbreak. It was a sad sob story at first. But over the course of the 18 months that I worked on the ring cycle, I felt like I was forging my life back together, much like Siegfried in the third installment of The Ring forges his sword back together out of its broken pieces. And at the end of the time that we were doing the cycle, actually, during the last weekend before we finished, I took myself on a tiny little mini vacation to Palm Springs. And there, as those of you who know my own personal history know, I met one Evan Strano, who you will also meet during today's episode. And 10 years later, we still seem to like each other, enough to be in isolation together. So if that's not love, I don't know what is. Any discussion of any part of the ring cycle and comedy at all would be totally incomplete without mentioning the brilliant British-Canadian comedian Anna Russell, who came to prominence and super active years in the post-Second World War era, so in the 40s and 50s. If you don't know her, get thee to YouTube and absolutely watch her 22-minute synopsis and send-up of the ring cycle. It's hilarious. We reviewed it again the other night. I promise I will not steal all of her jokes. I'm going to try and keep it to like 3 or 4. But if you're looking for those bright, shimmering moments of unadulterated joy during these times, she's somebody to watch for sure. Depending on the musicologist that you read, there are at least 5 different ways that Wagner uses leitmotifs to depict elements of his story. The first one that I want to explore is how Wagner uses leitmotifs to describe people. And if this is the idea of a theme song, Wagner employs it brilliantly. We're going to do all of our excerpts today from the first of the 4 ring cycle operas, Das Rheingold. You'll remember it from last episode where I showed you how Wagner creates the entire universe out of just 1 note and then just 2 notes. And in fact, the first leitmotif that comes from the sung music comes from a trio of Rhine maidens. As you may know, the setting for the first scene of Das Rheingold is in the River Rhine. Not on the River Rhine, literally in the river. And the three people who start singing are Rhine maidens, kind of mermaid ladies, and their job is to protect some very magical gold there. The very first thing that they sing sounds like this, and this is the Rhine maiden motive. Weia, vage, vogel, du Welle, wann zur Wiege, vagana, weia, wallana, weia, weia. I decided not to translate the German for you because pretty much that German doesn't mean anything. It means like la, 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 la. They're pretty happy because they still have control of their gold. And anytime you hear that melody or that accompaniment underneath, you can guess that Rhine maidens are present. The next motive that I'd like to show you is the foil to almost everybody in the story. He's kind of the villain, and his name is Alberich. He is a Nibelung. So if you know that this whole cycle is called the Ring of the Nibelungen, he's one of them. And he's this slimy, creepy little guy who lives near the water, in the water, under the water. He's up to no good. He has spotted this gold, and I think he wants it. Unlike the kind of pretty undulating music that the Rhine maidens get, his motives are made of the teensiest, tiniest intervals that exist on the piano and other orchestral instruments. A bunch of half steps right next to each other. And his kind of chaotic music sounds like this. Gatte, Glitter, glitschige Glimmer, wie gleicht ich aus? Mit heiligen Füßen, mit Wasser durchhaltig, die schreckliche Schlüpfer. If you didn't notice, Alberich says a lot of words, all at once, and he's not the most refined dude that you've ever met. Another way that Wagner employs the idea of leitmotif is to describe states of mind, actually. And in this first scene of Das Rheingold, we actually get one of those from Alberich. So Alberich has been attracted by the gold. He's also attracted by and to the three Rhine maidens. So he's been trying to kind of hit on them the whole time, and they're very naughty, these Rhine maidens. They tease him, they let him think that they're interested, and then right at the very last minute, they slip away. And he goes sliding around the underwater rocks. When he realizes that he's been rejected by all three Rhine maidens, he sings this motive, which is referred to as the woe motive. Woe is me, oh pain, you ladies are mean, I just wanted love. If you were just admiring the world-class poetry, I will just take credit for that. I've written all of the English paraphrases, and I've taken some dramatic license for those of you who know the ring cycle super duper well, but I just wanted to be able to illustrate points and make silly jokes, because that's fun. In fact, I think that calls for a drink. Onward. The next category of leitmotifs that Wagner employs are leitmotifs that depict objects. And there are some super important objects throughout the ring cycle. We'll just address one or two of them here. I've talked a lot about the gold that has been in the middle of the River Rhine, and that actually has its own motive, and it sounds like this. And that music sometimes combines with other notes to make harmonies, as it will in this example that I'm about to play. The identifiable thing just in addition to just the notes of that motive, are its rhythm. Now, I mentioned earlier that it's a simple complex, it's deployed with great genius. And one of the ways that leitmotifs are employed skillfully by Wagner is that he often layers them. So instead of just one object in this excerpt, we're going to get two. This object that I play the motive for in my right hand is actually the murmuring of the surface of the water. And when I combine them, we get the gold shimmering and the water murmuring just at dawn. Here I haven't translated anything, but the German just is the sisters talking to each other and talking about how beautiful the gold looks as it starts to shimmer with the first morning light. It sounds like this. Lugt, Schwestern, die Wepperin lacht in den Grund. Durch den grünen Schal, den wonnigen Schwefel sich grüßt. Jetzt küsst sich sein Auge, dass es öffne. Perhaps the most important motive out of all of the motives in the ring cycle is the one that comes from the title of the piece, the ring itself. In Wagner's musical language, it takes about 50 pages before we hear someone mention the ring for the first time at all. And of course, that character is Alberich. He's been scheming, thinking about how, if he can just get the gold away from these Rhine maidens, he can forge it into an all-powerful ring that will make him ruler of the entire world. And that's associated with this ring motive. The whole world would belong to the man that steals the Rhine gold and make a ring with power to rule the world. Doesn't that need like a moo-ha-ha-ha? One of my personal favorite ways of how Wagner uses leitmotifs in his writing are the leitmotifs that depict place. So at the end of the first scene that we were just discussing, Alberich does make off with the gold, and he steals it out of the river from the Rhine maidens, and we'll see what he does with it later. You kind of already know because of the foreshadowing that's happening. We can tell that we're in the second scene of the opera because Wagner shows us we've changed place with this motive that depicts Valhalla, the home of all of the gods. And in fact, Valhalla is newly built for Wotan, the god of all the gods. You can tell it's a grand place because of how it sounds, and I'll describe it while I play with a heavy debt of gratitude to Anna Russell's humor. They might need a second story after all. And heck, why not an attic? There are some more characters to introduce. The next two people that you have to meet are the giants. They are the people who built Valhalla. And they become super important plot points. But first, let me show you how they sound musically. One might describe them as lumbering. Very sweet, well, sort of sweet, but maybe not the smartest guys you've ever met. In fact, they've been duped. They've been duped by another character named Loga. And Loga he's actually the embodiment of fire. Not exactly a god himself. He's often, as he is in this scene, in service of gods. But fire, as you know, especially here in Southern California, is super fickle. It can heat us, it can nourish us, it can also burn our houses and our entire world. And the same thing is true throughout the ring cycle. So Wotan has asked Loga to convince the giants that they will get a great payment for building this beautiful palace, Valhalla. And actually, he hasn't decided what the payment is yet. Loga suggests that they give one of the goddesses, Freya, to the giants as a bride, and that should be what they do. And in the meantime, he says, you know, Wotan, don't worry about it too much. I'll think of something better to give them as payment. I just haven't come up with it yet. The motive, as you might imagine, for such a shifty guy sounds pretty shifty itself. And fickle, facile, quick. This is what it sounds like. Do not trust that guy. As we transition from the second scene to the third scene, we encounter one of my very favorite leitmotifs also. This one for completely different reasons, but let me set up the plot to explain how and why we get there. So Loga has suggested to the giants themselves that he's heard that the Rheingold has been stolen from the river. And just like everybody, they are enticed by the idea of getting a bunch of really fancy and magical gold in payment. It might even be better than getting this beautiful lady Freya as a bride. So they say, well, work on that and we'll get back to you. And that sort of ends the second scene. There's a little bit more to it. You'll have to, watch to find out the whole story. After that happens, we descend into Nibelheim, which is where Alberich and all of his cousins, I guess, all of the other Nibelungen live. And when we were talking about Alberich's motive, it was all of those half steps and that scritchy, scratchy music, lots of fast words, not refined at all. There's this amazing compositional device that Wagner uses for the leitmotif of the Nibelungen themselves and their home, Nibelheim. So he's making a motive that is both for a place and the people who live there. And one of the most amazing things about this motive is its orchestration. Of course, it's the whole orchestra playing. And those of you who have heard Wagner, and if you haven't, come see us do Tannhäuser in the fall. You'll get a chance to hear it live. But those of you who have heard Wagner know it's no small orchestra, and in fact, Wagner created his own instruments to be part of the orchestra, including things like Wagner tubas and other things like that. For this particular motive, though, he uses actual anvils melodically. And he is actually not the only composer during this era to do that. Actually, those of you who know the super famous anvil chorus, dun 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 dun. I dare you to hear me sing that without hearing clank, clank in your mind while I sing it. Anyway, Verdi wrote that for Il Trovatore, which we are also doing next fall at LA Opera. It's actually, I was curious to see which composer wrote it first. Trovatore comes from 1853. Das Rheingold was completed in 1854, so it's a little suspicious here. Verdi uses those anvils in exactly one way, just people, forging stuff, and it's one rhythm. Wagner takes it and makes a symphony of anvils, which is really truly one of the highlights, both in and out of the third scene of Das Rheingold. And I can't play the orchestra part and the anvil part at the same time. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to the one and only Evan Strano, making his debut on anvils. Oh, 1, 2, 3. There is one more fascinating transformation of a leitmotif that happens in Das Rheingold that is super worth pointing out and becomes the linchpin of the drama for the other three shows. So you've already heard the ring motive when we were in the first of the four scenes of Das Rheingold. It's when Alberic gets the idea that he should forge a ring out of the gold. I should just tell you that Wotan and Alberic Wotan and Loga trick Alberic out of his ring and the Tarnhelm. They do it by appealing to his ego too. So they said, you can become as big as a dragon, but can you become something small? And Alberic boasts, I can become as small as a toad. So he starts to, and he shows them, and then they pick him up by the scruff of his toad neck and carry him back to Valhalla, taking all of his gold with them and stealing it from him. When we get back to Valhalla, some other stuff happens, and Alberic is mightily angry. They use all of the gold that they've stolen from Alberic. They pay off the giants. Immediately, one of the giants turns on the other because he's greedy and wants all of the gold. You get the idea that this gold, when stolen, is not the best thing to have. It's a little bit dangerous. And in fact, Alberic is so upset that this gold has been stolen and all of his power has been stolen that he puts a curse on whoever possesses the gold. And the fascinating thing about this particular motive is that it is a transformation of the ring motive. If you remember, the ring motive starts high, works its way down through some intervals, and then goes up. And the curse on that ring is exactly the mirror image of it. It's a melody that starts low, climbs up, and then goes down. So let me refresh your memory about the ring motive. That was the one that went like this. The whole world would belong to the man that steers the Rheingold. So high, lower, down, then it climbs up. The inverse of that, which is the curse, sounds like this. If I can't have this stolen gold, then cursed be this ring. When I first had the idea of doing a show about leitmotifs, it was because their use in Wagner's music reminds me very much of drinking games that you might play to Star Wars or to The Lord of the Rings. And I don't heavily advise this in reality for an entire Wagner opera because you are going to get tipsy fast. But I wanted to demonstrate how this might work if it were a drinking game. And to that end, we brought back the illustrious Evan Strano, who will do all of the drinking while I do all of the other stuff, all of the calling out the leitmotifs and singing the parts and playing the parts. The English translation is my own. It's a little ridiculous. I hope you enjoy. In the meantime, Prost! So, the excerpt that we're going to do is the last 2.5 minutes of the piece with one little cut just to tighten it up. We start with the character Loga. And remember, we said, don't trust that guy. Wotan thinks he's still got him under his control. But Loga starts the scene by saying he's not sure he wants to stay loyal to them. And who knows what will happen. So, I should say, I'm going to start to sing, and within 2 beats, the first leitmotif happens. So Evan's going to drink after 2 beats. Here we go. They think they contain me. I still could burn them. We'll see what I do. So now Evan has to drink again because we get the Valhalla music, which lets us know that Wotan is still here. And now Evan has to drink again because the Rhine maidens are about to speak. Rhine gold, Rhine gold, Rhine gold. We're lonely without that kind of bling in our lives. And now Evan has to drink again because Wotan says to them, hey, did you mean this gold? With that gold motive. And then Evan has to drink again because the Rhine maidens continue with their leitmotif. We really want it, really bad. Give us the gold, give us the gold. Oh, give all the frig and frag and gold back to us. The ladies kind of curse a lot when they've been drinking, so you have to forgive them. Now, Evan has to drink again because the Valhalla theme comes back. There's a reason why. Wotan tells Loga to shut these ladies up, and he does it by using Wotan's music, not his own music. It sounds like this. You in the water, you need to chill. Here is what we will do. We will keep all your precious gold. You can look to us up here each time you want to see the gold. And Evan has to drink again because he signs off with Loga's own music. So they shouldn't trust him either. It sounds like this. And the ladies talk again. They are not impressed at all. Evan has to drink some more. Rhine gold, Rhine gold, Rhine gold. You should not mess with a power you can't control. And the gold itself agrees because that motive has transformed to a minor key now. Evan has to drink some more. And the Rhine maidens continue, so Evan drinks some more. We alone are its rightful owners. You see just how bad you messed up. And Evan has to nearly finish his beer because we end the scene and the entire opera with the Valhalla motive that shows us that Wotan thinks he's been triumphant nonetheless. Cheers. So if you enjoyed watching my husband drink an entire beer all in 2.5 minutes, And if you enjoy finding the humor in the ring cycle, I absolutely have to point you in the direction of the wonderful, talented, amazing Ryan McKinney, who is doing a lot of videos for a website called theartistrelieftree.com. It's a not-for-profit organization that is trying to raise funds for artists who will not be paid because of the just tons of cancellations that are happening throughout the classical music world. He partners with Jamie Barton and does a hilarious 9-minute scene from Das Rheingold. Super clever. Please check it out. Please give him some love. Both of them are buddies and fellow musicians who I trained with when I did my Young Artist program in Houston. I also want to send a little bit of love to the continuing LA Opera at Home recitals series. Hopefully you enjoyed our concerts last week. There are some more this week. One that I want to bring your attention to for April 9th, it features Michael Hawk and Sylvia Duremo, and I will be virtually accompanying Sylvia in the song selections that she's offering that day. So please check it out. I think they will turn out really beautifully. And I also want to plug this show for next week, a week in this time. We'll be doing a show about famous drinking scenes in opera and all of the horrible and funny choices that people make when they've been singing and drinking at the same time. Please check it out. In the meantime, have a great week, and I can't wait to see you again. Prost!